I'll start with Kerry James Marshall and this idea of demystification as power. Um, I think this idea of how Marshall has come up with a methodology and a really nice way of saying, I'm going to utilize the way form can carry meaning in order to elevate the subject matter of my artwork. And so when you look at this particular painting of his called Our Town. It's featured briefly in the video, but it's a large painting. You know, it's a significantly large painting, and when you come up to it, you're kind of engulfed in this image, and the use of what he calls the grand narrative style of painting, which is it's a reference, and so I thought the painting that comes to mind when I think about grand narrative painting is a painting called The Raft of the Medusa, and this is at the Louvre in Paris. And I think right around the corner here from it is the Mona Lisa. You come into this hallway and you see these massive, huge framed paintings that are commanding attention. Right? There's elements of that, like I said, that gold leaf frame, the size, the scale. These are all commanding your viewing and elicit importance, right? They exude significance, right? Because of their size and the amount of resources and the display and so on. And so and if you look, and I don't know, coming back to some of our conversations around form and content, this is a really wonderful example. Let me see if I can find a good image. Something like, is this large enough? Let's see, Wikipedia's. Yeah, okay. Let's see if we can open up this Wikipedia image. Nah, it's tiny. I forget how. Let's just go to it and open it this way. Open link in new tab. There we go. Okay, so the Raft of the Medusa here does a really nice job of, through its composition, much like Kerry James Marshall illustrates, it has this, the wave, right, is re-represented by the raft of these humans looking or seeing a ship in the distance and hopefully being rescued. Now this is a depiction, a reenacted depiction, representation of a real event, a ship that had sank, and these are the survivors at sea and looking to be saved, and obviously dramatized, but something that you might consider kind of like a newspaper editorial image or something like that of an actual event, and then a painter dramatizing that, like we do with film and so on. So Kerry James Marshall, coming back to this image, right, of Our Town, is using these lines, these compositions to direct us, the subject of the the subject matter, but also the content of the work is partly what it evokes, which is that solicitation of power or importance. And so to then inject this figure that is deeply black, right, and has the skin tone on these figures that are represented here are elevating that darkness, that blackness, to a status of power, right? And the everything, this Our Town, this is ownership, right? These kind of representations of Americana, where this is the dream, this is where you own property, and so on and so forth. So I think Kerry James Marshall does this repeatedly over and over and over in his work to the point where it's just such a well orchestrated um, uh, uh, formula and a life's work to elevate these figures through representation in these paintings that hinge on the importance of form, right, and content, and that scale, evoking a historical precedent for grandness carrying power, right? The grand painting in a space, commanding our attention. Oh, I just lost it. You see what I mean, I think. So he's doing that. That's his methodology, and he does it in other ways too, right? With the comic books, where he's taking figures that are underrepresented or misrepresented, and injecting them into a form, the comic book, right, that is exuding power through its representation of these superheroes. And so he's redefining the representations available for that black figure, and obviously that has all these cultural and socioeconomic and political connotations. So Kerry James Marshall's a powerful force in understanding how, and I think a really clear force in understanding how you can establish this kind of methodology or formula and repeat it again and again in a way that does a good job of reinforcing its reasons for being in the world, right? And he's making sense of the subjects he's interested in through the process of generating a relationship to the form and its historical ways of being understood, and its position, its context, all those kind of things, and then injecting it with the content that he's very particularly interested in representing and communicating. So I think that one's really pretty straightforward. Now, Wim Delvoye, I think, gets a little bit messy, right? Wim Delvoye, and I'm using Cloaca as a starting point, but Cloaca being the machine that he's producing, that is, in his mind, a representation of the mechanics of digestion, right? And so the human digestion, and that human digestion processing food, human food, right? And processing that and outputting feces, right? And he has a lot of ways of talking about it, but I think this is better representation, this image. So you have then the cloaca is the toilet that spits out identifiably human feces, because he's using all the components of our digestion tract with the enzymes and everything to produce human feces through a machine, then vacuum sealing it, putting it in these plastic vitrines, labeling them with a logo. This cloaca looks like Ford or Coca-Cola, and selling it, right? So that process of making feces for sale as a product, much like any commercial product, he's obviously got creating a commentary on capitalism and the commodification of art, and I think one of the things to keep in mind, he also has this methodology where he's taking a form that is seen of a lower status form. He does it in like the cement mixer that he represents, but then he adorns it and decorates it with the styling of something of status and worth that's very expensive, and so you get this contrast or this juxtaposition between these two things, and that generates something new, right? I think it's good, but it's also simple. It's a kind of simple strategy. It's not very complex in my mind what he's doing, but it is sometimes complex to understand someone who's criticizing and in a calculated way, really criticizing the institution of art and its role in capitalist economic structure, but then also he's benefiting. Right? He's selling and making a lot of money and laughing to the bank, and those are really, really just really hard things to contend with and grapple with. So I think there's a lot to gnaw on and bite. He's kind of taking a dig at you. Now the crazy thing though is that who's actually laughing, right? Is he laughing as he's amassing wealth through this process of criticizing the institutions that are paying him, or is he being used just as others are whose work is being commodified? Those are complicated things to consider. So I would ask you to ponder. Some of you had some really interesting things to say around real versus representation. I think it's both, actually. I think it is real and it's also representation, and it's a very blurry situation. And I think it can exist as both, actually, which is a really hard thing to grapple with. And I hope I'm not confusing too many of you by saying that, but I think it kind of can exist in two realms. So, take that. I think now the things that get really ethically challenging are the ones around the pigs and the art farm and the humans that he's exploiting and the pigs he's exploiting, and man, that stuff gets so cynical and pretty intense. And I'm curious as we move forward if we're going to be challenged as much as we are with Mim Delvoye, because there's definitely some heavy hitting things coming up. Now, the thing again that I want you to pull away from some of this, though, just with Kerry James Marshall and with Wim Delvoye, is this establishment of a methodology, right? A methodology being a process by which they work and produce the things that they're producing, and both of them have established a clear sense of what it is that what their questions are and what they're trying to answer, and how they go about answering it is really established and clinical and clear, and I think that's something to really pay attention to, because you start to notice now that there's artists who have, these kind of agendas and bodies of work that they want to produce and present, and it starts to help us understand the kind of bigger picture, okay, the bigger picture of an artist and their role.